come to do a graduate course in economics in the 1960s and specialized in development economics. And there one became very much aware because he was one of the pioneers of the field. They were, with ideas that were contended by others. There were, a couple of other leading lights, but he certainly was one of the dominant figures in this new field of development economics. And he had written this set of articles on development with unlimited supplies of labor, which fired the imagination and provoked some controversy among economists worldwide. It just tells you, that Lewis at that time was certainly someone whose work was extensively read and discussed among the leading lights in this new field of development economics. Lewis was the chancellor of the University of Guyana. That was in 1969, and was presiding over the graduation ceremony. And I, sought to engage him in some conversation at the end of the ceremony, talking about the work of an economist named William Baumol, a very well-known figure at the time too. And it turned out, Lewis told me that Baumol was not only his colleague, but was his friend. And we chatted a bit. But what struck me most of all is when he got down from the platform and sat on the edge of the platform with his legs dangling, talking to me. You don't expect the great Sir Arthur Lewis to do that, just to make sure that you're talking at more or less the same level and making you feel comfortable. So that was it told me something about the humility of Sir Arthur. Lewis was regarded as the authority on international terms of trade between a certain period of economic development. So everybody made reference to what Lewis had done, and many tried to criticize it in some way or build on it in some way. He had come to give some lectures after getting a Nobel Prize. At the end of one of those, I asked him some questions about terms of trade. I had just read an article by an economist named John Sprouse, which raised some questions about some things that Lewis had done on the matter of terms of trade, in fact. And I used that article to raise some questions with Lewis, and he was demurring, sort of more or less saying, well, no, that is not how it should be seen, etc., etc. And I persisted, and I think he finally said, listen, this is going on too long. So he said, oh, I know John Sprouse. He was my PhD student, and his statistics were always bad. And then he turned to his wife, he said, Gladys, do you remember John Sprouse? Remember his statistics were always bad? So with that, argument was over. The Caribbean Studies Association had decided that they would honor Lewis by compiling his various articles and papers. And they did so in a very nice letterbound thing and presented it to him as a gift. He had agreed to appear on the condition that he did not speak, that he was not required to speak. But on receiving the present, he was so overwhelmed by it that he spoke. And he told a little story which I wouldn't, bother to go through here, but the essence of it was the feeling of only finally, towards the end, being fully appreciated and by the people that you had given your life to. He was the founding president of the Caribbean Development Bank. He started the institution and ensured that it was firmly established with the right principles, with the respect for professionalism and technical analyses, and that it engendered the respect of the governments. It established a good relationship with the various governments that were shareholders of the bank. So I think the bank owes Sir Arthur Lewis a lot for that foundation that he laid. he made such a big contribution to development policy in the Caribbean and continued to do so while he was president of the bank. He would, make some timely interventions, sometimes through articles in the newspapers, that would start a debate, a policy debate along the right lines. And that is important not only for the CDB, which is, of course, a development institution charged with financing Caribbean development, but for the wider Caribbean community to have at its disposal a set of well-worked out ideas about how we should develop. He also advised in Africa, several governments at a critical stage when they were newly independent. So this is a man whose contribution globally are immense. And by virtue of being West Indian, he brought an element of a wider recognition to the West Indies and validation of the West Indian potential than I think many other individuals were able to do.